And we're back. It's Channel 9, and we're live. I'm gonna throw like a small child.
Nice catch.
Thank you very much. That was a little not exactly not my strong point. Throwing things is not my strong point, but I can code. We are here with the James Bond of demos, Josh Twist. How are you, sir?
I'm good, sir. How are you?
Dude, you're like a machine. I was talking to the goo with you. Like, you just like boom, boom, boom. The demos.
Following the Hanselman, though.
Oh, you're too kind. You're too kind. But congratulations, your product is live. GA.
It's awesome, huh? That's
General
great.
availability,
Wow.
right? That means you're a real boy.
It does. Like when I wrote a blog post a year ago when we did build, saying launching Baby Zumo, because it had been like a little project I'd worked on from day one. And
Zumo was the code name.
Zumo was the code name for mobile services, right? And what was my blog post? Releasing Baby Zumo or something. Now it's like he's not a baby anymore, right? He's a big, he's kind of a teenager maybe now.
That's interesting. So it's called Azure Mobile Services.
Yep.
And I mean, I don't need to pick on you about the name, but is it only for mobile devices? I mean, it seems like it's more of a REST construction kit in the cloud.
It's a good question. I mean, if you think about devices, they tend to connect to APIs.
Mm-hmm.
So really what we've done is we've created a streamlined way to build APIs. Going a bit further than that, it's not just an API kit. We've also added clients that make it really, really easy to call those APIs, very domain focused, so I can call tables and work with data from the client without thinking about REST at all if I want to. Mm-hmm. Or with the feature we talked about in the keynote this morning, the custom API feature. I can now just do kind of arbitrary, random REST operations, if you will. I can invoke, call back. Yeah. So it's about building APIs because that's what devices need, but we do have kind of a laser focus on devices and those particular platforms we talked about this morning.
If you've never checked out Azure or gone into Azure, if you sign up just to see the quick start, seriously, of what these guys have. It's actually funny. I was teasing some of the other teams because the quick start, this is when you're in the portal and you say mobile service, you make your new mobile service, and then it's like, now what? Right? This is what happens.
Yep.
They have the best quick start. It literally is like, maybe I could make it the to-do application as like a hello world, and it says, click here for iOS, click here for Android, click here for HTML, and click here for Windows 8. They'll actually generate the code, zip it up, and send it to you, so you just unzip it and open the thing up. Like, you make the other guys' quick starts go to shame.
Thank you.
It's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, it's good. I mean, that was the goal, right?
It's like absolutely crystal clear what you do next.
All of the kind of our big driving thing in mobile services is we want to make those main scenarios, like getting started, working with data, doing auth. We want to make it so easy that you have the reaction you're having about our quick start. Like, that's wow, that's that's what we're looking for.
Okay, so let me see if I understand. I'm going to run my scenario by you.
Okay, let's do it.
I'm a mobile developer, and I've just written Bejeweled.
Oh, awesome! Wow.
I don't know.
You're going to be rich.
We can't call it that. We'll call it Jabooled or something. No one will ever know that they're related. And I've got this game, though, but I'm awesome at making PNGs, and I'm awesome at mobile, and I'm great at UX, but I don't want to think about the back end.
Yeah.
But I know that everybody needs Facebook login, they need Twitter login, and they need a leaderboard.
Yep.
And then I wake up the next day, and my little stupid app that I wrote to keep track of the leaderboard is, I'm on TechCrunch.
Right.
And now, suddenly I go from being a cool, artsy, kind of Adobe Creative Cloud type person
to managing a
and now I need to have a server somewhere or n number of servers.
Yep.
Is that a mobile services
We are definitely
solution?
The product for you. I think that's a really good example. So when we launched the product, our laser focus was on client developers, guys who maybe aren't that interested in running a back end. And so we wanted to make it easy. That's why you can do most of the SQL features are available in the portal.
Okay.
So, I can add indexes, I can remove columns, I can add new tables. I don't have to go and do SQL Management Studio. We also wanted to allow people to do much more than that. So you can go into SQL Management Studio and add columns and add unique constraints and go further than the things we let you do in the portal. And so the reason we had that kind of focus was exactly for the type of person you just described. What I would add, though, is since we went to preview a year ago, we found that about half of the people use actually for a different reason. And so we really focus on those guys as well now. It's kind of a shared focus. And that's, they're happy to write back-end code. These guys are writing really complex scripts in Node, etc., for mobile services. but they really want it managed. They really don't want to think about, let's imagine there was some security bug found in our runtime. It'll never happen, but let's just imagine for a second hypothetically. I've got good news for you. We're going to go in, we're going to patch that, we're going to deploy it. You're not going to have this rush of zero-day exploits announced on Twitter, and everybody's suddenly trying to deploy patches to their server. The mobile services team are going to do that for you. So people like that, and even the back-end guys, I call them the back-end ninjas that are using mobile services, they want to save time. And so if our feature set is a good fit for what they're doing, it's a pretty natural choice, right?
That's actually a really important thing. Maybe we could talk a little bit about the layering, because I'm just starting to get my head around this. And when I'm explaining Azure to people and cloud stuff in general, virtual machines, we all get that, right? It's virtual machines in the cloud, but once you go file a new project, or file a new virtual machine rather, you have this baby that you have to feed. And you have to run update or apt-get upgrade, and you have to keep that up to date.
If it's an IS
even if it has nothing to do with what you're interested in. Right? I want to make Bejeweled, and now I have the deal with the weight.
That's a lot of psychic weight, I think.
Psychic weight.
That is a lot of psychic weight.
I need to get psychicweight.com. So someone's just gotten it, and now I shouldn't have said that. Azure websites. So what is IaaS? We call that, right? Is
so infrastructure as a service.
Infrastructure as a service.
It's kind of the lowest level. You're hiring tin effectively.
Hiring tin.
Hiring tin.
You're pretty much English
hiring
thing
metal.
to say.
Is it? Okay.
I like that.
Thank you.
I'm going to use that. Okay, so that is virtual machines in the cloud. I get that. Websites are kind of like IIS in the cloud, but it's web server in the cloud. But it is in a virtual machine somewhere. And I could have my own virtual machine, my own reserved virtual machine, but I don't have to ever run update. I know it's always fresh and patched. And I can make lots of them and move things around. And it's very transparent, right? Where does mobile services sit in that? Are you running on virtual machines? Are you running on websites?
So we actually sit on top of websites. So websites are how we host our code that runs. So we're higher up on the stack. In fact, I think of it as a spectrum of AAS, of as a service things. So at the bottom of this spectrum, you've got infrastructure as a service, which is like raw. I'm going to manage a lot of stuff, but I get total control. And then further up, you've got platform as a service. And if you think about Azure Cloud Services, that's kind of it's a platform as a service. I get the OS patched for me. I don't have to worry about a lot of stuff, but I really am fairly close to the tin. And then you look at websites. I'm somewhat more removed from that, but it's getting easier. I have to worry about less. It's more kind of portable in terms of the code. And then mobile services is right up here, entering a new territory, which people call backend as a service. It's very, very managed. You just plug in the little bits of code that kind of matter to you. So, I mean, that's how I think about it. I think we're very high up on that chart.
So you are an app that is a website, and we are putting our code in your app. Like, we're not really on the metal at all. We're sitting on Azure Mobile Services. Okay, so virtual machines handles the updating of the operating system, and websites handles the deployment of all those things, and the scale and the management. And then you handle what?
So we handle, literally we benefit from all those things. So when Azure
that means stuff you don't have to do.
We don't worry about tons of stuff. We stand on the shoulder of giants.
We don't worry about tons of stuff. You heard it here first.
We stand on the shoulder of giants in terms of standing on top of the Antares guys. Everything down there.
Antares, of course, being the code name for websites.
Websites team. We then have essentially an application that is all the code you would write if you were going to go and write your Bejeweled backend.
Okay,
so we wrote it all for you.
I want a leaderboard. I want social login.
We don't quite give a leaderboard.
But I want to write a leaderboard, so I assume that's going to be, I can imagine the tables in my mind.
Exactly.
But that's what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Like, I'm not saying you're going to file a new leaderboard.
So now when you go for that thought of I need a table that is a leaderboard, it's like click new table, and then we'll run all of the authentication logic for you. We make it really easy to build out your custom authorization.
Well, I want people to log in on Facebook and Twitter. Do you hide that from me?
We make it very easy. I mean, you just, you need these 2 keys from Twitter. You create a new Twitter application. You get 2 keys from those guys. You cut and paste those over into the Azure portal on your mobile services identity tab.
Oh, really? So you don't put it in code. You tell your config. You have a place for that.
No code on the server. Right. So you just literally paste that config in. And then what you've got to do is go and add a little bit of code to your client to trigger the login. But we even take care of quite a lot there for you as well. So imagine an iOS application where What I would have to do now is build some kind of web view control that would host the OAuth dance and have a cancel button and an activity indicator.
Right,
that tells me
they
when stuff's running.
they pop a browser and I log in and it goes away and they have to capture it.
That's a ton of stuff to worry about. So that's all in our SDK. So now you just call a single line of code, log in with provider, say Twitter if that's what you want. We'll pop the view for you and then we'll hydrate all the user tokens, etc., onto the client. So then every call you make back to mobile services, that authentication token travels with it. The next thing you know as a developer, though, you don't worry about any of that stuff, is if you want to check user identity, you just look at the user object and say, oh, this is user ID Josh.
Okay, so then if I might have my new Bejeweled game not just on iOS, but on Windows, Windows Phone, Jabuled, rather, pardon me, see, I'm breaking trademarks here. Am I using your APIs, or do I call, like I have a question here, do I just use Web API to call you, or do I have to use your thing?
So we have a very, very simple HTTP API. We have this kind of idea of simplicity all through the stack. But not everybody, I mean, again, let's use the example of iOS. You could just call a HTTP API from an iOS application.
Right.
It's kind of, there's a lot of code to write there. We wanted to make it really easy.
Header management and auth.
Yeah, all that stuff. Yeah. And, handling protocols, and we wanted to turn it into blocks. Blocks and protocols are Objective-C ideas. It's like what is it like? It's like a callback versus a nice lambda something. Right. We wanted to make all that stuff easy, so it's just layering. It's like layering everywhere, right? We layer all the things, and so you can actually call mobile services from anything. We have people today. In fact, one example I think Eric wouldn't mind me talking about is Rowe app on Windows Phone.
Right, Rowe is the Twitter app.
The awesome Twitter app. So that's backed by Azure Mobile Services today. And they use it to store data. They use it in a somewhat unusual way, but whatever works for people is great for us. They actually have some web roles, I think they are, in Azure that call mobile services HTTP API. They just love our data stack. And so they use it for a lot of that, and they're going to look to use it for push as well.
So they're using you as a database?
Effectively, yeah.
Because you're a very unstructured database, right? I can go and make a new column.
We make it feel like an unstructured database. Obviously, behind that is the benefit of a fully relational SQL database that you can run ad hoc queries on.
I can even see, like if I want to peek behind the curtain, I can see the data?
People do it all the time. You want to run BI on that? You want to run reporting services? So some background on that was when we launched the product, we went and spoke with a lot of mobile developers, and we asked them, how do you feel about data? And they were like, oh, we love NoSQL. NoSQL's the thing for mobile developers. We pressed on that. We found 2 bits of feedback.
Okay.
They love the zero friction, zero impedance. I just throw data at this thing. I don't have to worry about this upfront data schematization. But then they hate trying to run reporting on it. They hate the fact that they can't do queries across tables and so on.
Right.
So dynamic schematization was our answer to this, where we dynamically schematize the SQL database for you based on what we receive at the mobile service. Okay. So you kind of get the best of both worlds to some degree. You get I don't have to do this upfront data modeling exercise, zero friction, low impedance development, but I still have a relational database. I can run normal backups on that. I can run reporting services on it. I can do my BI analysis on it, ad hoc queries, et cetera, et cetera.
I see. So I can be as high level as I want and use all of these object models and stuff.
Yep.
But then, go nuts and select star from whatever in the back end if I choose to do that.
Totally.
Okay.
Yep.
Got a question here from Robert who wants to know, what about other custom languages? What if I want to use, because right now it's Node.js, is it not?
It is Node.js runtime, so all of the server scripts. It's JavaScript. So all of the server scripts are written in JavaScript today. This is a pretty common question about C#. So what I'd say on that, I can't commit to anything, but what I'd say on that is we're investigating it. I think it would be a cool thing to add, and let's see if we have an update.
You're investigating it, and it would be cool.
That's what we're saying.
That's all you're going to give me?
That's all I'm giving you. Sorry.
I wish you well in your investigations. That's cool. I mean, duh. I hope that you do it. I hope you're not just being cagey. What about things like TypeScript? Like I can do Node, but I might want to add a little type annotation, and TypeScript and Node work well together. Yeah.
So people do that today. You can, because you can generate JavaScript from your TypeScript files.
I guess I could do this.
You can do that.
I could do it on the client. I could do this today.
Right now.
I can't necessarily put the TypeScript in your text
box, the browser,
but I could generate it and drop it in there.
So you just want some kind of process when you deploy. You're done. People are doing that already.
Okay. Here's a good question from Aaron who wants to know what about Xamarin, right? Xamarin is really great. They're partners here. Visual Studio and Azure Mobile Services
big fans
love
of
Xamarin.
The Xamarin guys, right?
There could be a button.
There could be.
I could click a button there.
And
are you investigating that?
We are now, as of this moment.
As of this very moment.
We do have, I think the guy asking the question knows that we have Xamarin integration, so those guys have an Azure Mobile Services SDK on the store, on the Xamarin store.
Okay, so in the Xamarin store, you can do this today.
You can get the pieces and do it. It sounds like he's asking that he'd like a quick start.
Well, the quick start is just legendary, right? And it's got this great generation. Why not just generate MonoTouch or MonoDroid?
So as of this moment, we are investigating Xamarin as a quick start.
The investigation has begun.
feel
Twitter,
authorized to
Facebook
say
login,
that.
any other logins? Google login, Windows Live login?
So what can I say about that? I mean, there's some things we really want to do. We really want to make that story more extensible.
Well, let me rephrase. Let's talk about this. So I can go and ask about features and stuff, but I think what people do you have a user voice site?
We do. Yes.
So why don't we just point people there? Because
Go to mobile
ultimately
services.
it'll happen if it's highly voted.
We've actually knocked off a ton of our most highly voted feature requests since as part of GA with custom API, shared code, NPM support. We've just batted a few of those away.
And
so keep them coming.
mobileservices.uservoice?
It's mobileservices.uservoice.com.
Nice,
So yeah,
nice,
put
nice.
those on there. And give us specific things. If you're asking about identity, I would like to know what providers do you need? How do you feel about it?
Okay. Question about mobile services on-premise. I don't know why, but people want things on-premise, right? Maybe private data, can't do it. Is this something that someone could potentially put into the Azure pack or get and run themselves?
Arguably, it's technically feasible. User voice.
It's not really what you're in the business of, though, right? Because you are an Azure thing.
We are. So is there other things in Azure Pack, I guess, but user voice.
Yeah.
User voice.
If he wants to build a website with a mobile app, should he use it as his backend? Well, he should use Azure Mobile Services.
Obviously.
I know about that.
If
Obviously.
I want to build a website with a... Oh, I see. What should I use as my backend?
That's a tough one. I mean, I think that you could host the website for the app on Azure websites.
Yep.
It's the back end on mobile services.
We actually have a ton of different compositions, though, is how I would think about it. So we have examples of people who have a website that's using mobile services as a data stack. Seriously, this is happening. So they have a
Really?
website that, they
So it has
use...
nothing to do with mobile anything. It's just, I like your data stack so much, I'm going to just use my website.
They probably have a mobile aspect as well. I mean, there are examples where the mobile device never connects to mobile services. We have
Here's
that,
a question.
for
So here's a question.
Yep.
I use Hansel Minutes, right? My podcast, and it's a single page web pages app.
Ah, okay.
Because I'm cheap. You got to understand that I'm extremely cheap. I don't want to run SQL because it costs money.
Okay.
So I use SQL Compact Edition.
Oh, do you really? Oh,
Like
wow.
I use the little tiny one, and then I just cache everything for 4 hours.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
You are cheap.
Because
Yeah.
I'm cheap.
Okay.
And it's one table.
Yep.
Shows.
Yep.
And it's got like 5 or 6 columns and 4 each over it, and go nuts.
Right.
I could make it a mobile services app, right?
You could do, yeah.
Because I like your dynamic schema stuff.
Yeah.
And I get a free backend. I could write Gmail.
Yep, you
entirely in mobile services.
You could do that.
Dude, you should totally do that as a demo.
Okay, I'll get on it.
You should totally write a
I'm
Gmail
investigating
clone.
that right now.
That would be a great demo because it is
would.
that open of a schema.
Yeah, and we showed in the keynote this morning, the SPA stack.
Yeah.
How we can, that was actually worked on by
single page applications.
Single page applications. That was worked on by Steve Sanderson, by the way, who's legendary in the SPA space as the creator of Knockout.js. So we have our JavaScript SDK makes it very easy to call web apps. So that's one of the composition options we see.
Right.
That's particularly popular with a particular type of architecture where increasingly today people are trying to generate static sites and they run at extremely low cost. So one thing we've seen is people will use the scheduler in mobile services to generate static assets and then push them into something like blob storage, which can do super high scale at super low cost effectively, because you only pay really for the bandwidth, which you'll be paying for anyway, and the file storage using, which is kilobytes typically. The scheduler updates that on an hourly basis based on your database.
So you could have a product catalog of thousands and thousands of products.
Yep.
Use the scheduler and generate all that HTML.
Fling it onto something where it's low cost to serve those pages. Use the
Right.
scheduler for that. But then you typically want some kind of dynamic part of that site. Like maybe you can log in and get some user-specific thing. So at that point, you use the JavaScript SDK to call mobile services APIs and just add that flavor
From the static pages?
from the static pages. You like?
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Now, this scheduler, this is something that people just like. The scheduler itself,
love
they
it.
like.
I like it.
What's the story there?
Yeah, people use the scheduler on its own, actually. So the scheduler, sorry, I'm being
I'll
English.
say schedule, you say
I'll
schedule.
say schedule. It basically allows you to write a piece of code that gets executed on a timed basis that you suggest. So we
Okay.
support, every 15 minutes. I use this for a ton of things. I have an app called Do2, which is like a shared to-do list app.
Okay.
And I use it to run a backup on my SQL every night. And even though SQL Azure is super high availability, it's like replicated into
Right, they're
3
backing it up
databases.
for you.
They back it up for me. But if I make a mistake as a developer and I go and shred a ton of data, that's
Right.
instantly copied to those backups for me. So I run a backup every night. So if I do something stupid, which could happen given it's me, then I can roll back to at least the night before or half a day. So you want to be taking backups
That's
like that.
cool.
Scheduler, I have a blog post on this. It's kind
I
of
was
a
just
10-minute
going to
job.
ask if that's on your blog.
It's on my blog. So,
Rock on.
so that's one example. I send emails once a week to anybody who starts signing up but doesn't finish the sign-up process. I only do it for a few weeks before I start
Sure.
bothering them. If you wanted to build an app that monitors stock prices and says sell when something hits a certain price, or send out a notification when a flight time changes so you can have that context, then the scheduler is the easiest way to build that kind of application.
Right, right. Now, I know that when I explain to people, like, how is Azure making money, and why do you allow Linux on Azure, and why do you like Node on Azure, is pretty straightforward. We charge for CPU cycles, right? No matter how you
And
figure
storage,
things
yeah.
out. Storage, we either hold your stuff, or we think about your stuff.
Yep.
And we charge for the thinking.
Yep.
What is the pricing model for this? Are you charging for how hard you work, or the number of calls?
We just announced a new pricing model in mobile services today. Was it today? It was today. It feels like it was 3 days ago since we launched. And that's based on API calls.
Okay.
So you're limited. You get a free offering. We have 10 free mobile services. I can't remember off the top of my head how many API calls you get, but you get
Okay.
a lot. You can develop comfortably.
Like thousands?
Thousands. It might even be millions. It might even be 1 million a month or something.
Seriously?
I'd have to check. I can't.
That's a lot.
It's a lot. It's a lot. And you get a free 20 megabyte database now in SQL, which is thumbs up. So you can genuinely develop for free. We then have a shared tier where you get some more API calls. You're running on a dedicated VM, so you're not sharing anything with anybody else. That costs a little bit more. And then you can go to premium where you get a whole, metric ton of
So you said
API
20
calls.
megabyte database. I could put maybe a couple thousand users in there.
20, you'd be surprised
20
actually
meg
how many
seems
users.
small.
It sounds small, but especially for mobile scenarios where you're not
Yeah.
sending, you wouldn't put images in there. You use
No,
blob
I'll
storage
put
for images.
where the users, their names and all that kind of stuff. Their score, their
profile
leaderboard.
data. Yeah, I mean, 20 megabytes actually pretty big.
It would be interesting, just as a little tip for you or whatever, to put that into real world terms, because you know how they always have the new whatever tablet has got 32 gigs. Well, okay, what
a
does
good
that
suggestion,
mean?
right.
That equals 5,000 photos. Da, da, da.
Yeah.
20, I could see someone scoffing at 20 megs, but then tell me that I could do 5,000 users
Yep.
or 5,000 Facebook logins and all of the leaderboards, and I go, oh, well, yeah, that's great.
Yeah. Yeah, we should do that. Actually.
Yeah,
It's a
that's
good
a good
idea. It's a
idea.
very good idea.
Here's a great question from Heinrich on the site here, who says that he wants to make something in Azure Mobile Services, but his data model is richer. It's got relationships. He's got orders, and orders have order details, and order details have this. How do you do relationships like that?
Yeah, so it's a good question. We get asked this quite a bit. We don't have any kind of ORM capability on the client. We get this feedback a bit, but we also get as many votes of saying thank you for not building an ORM that goes all the way from the client, all the way through a middle service,
Sure.
all the way to a database. I mean, it becomes very fraught and very complicated. So we keep things simple on that front. For people who want to do this is one of the reasons custom API is great. You can write any kind of SQL you want in a custom API. You can do joins, aggregates, groups, and basically build very focused, very pointed custom APIs that return. I just did a demo now here at my session at 2 o'clock. And I had a custom API that got a number of counts of votes, because that's the kind of thing you might want to do with an ORM, right? Is do an aggregate query.
Sure.
So I just wrote the SQL, said response.send 200 results, and it was like 4 lines of code to do this. I send that to the client does what it wants with it. So you either have this very, very simple, very, very approachable, easy to understand, very focused way of working with data that's not relational,
Right.
or you can go and do more advanced things with custom API.
So you can make kind of like a view, like have your own API that's a GET,
Yep.
and it goes and flattens that data. You write the SQL yourself, but the order with its order details comes back.
That's right. We actually, because we have those interceptors as well, so we have JavaScript that can run in between a table being executed. I showed that this morning as well. You can change the results as they're coming through the stream. So we have my colleague Carlos's blog has examples where when the results are coming back, he suddenly changes them to include relationships and sends those down to the client. Now, the client has to parse those and understand them, but it's all possible.
Okay. What if I want to have my own SQL Server database? I don't want to use, SQL Azure or whatever magic you're using in the background.
Today, we only support SQL Azure database.
Like, what if I have my own VM and point a connection string at me instead of you?
Yeah, I can see we get that occasionally. I'd say use a voice on that one. Get on use a voice if you think that's important. Vote on it, and we'll prioritize it appropriately.
Okay, but what if I want to change types? I've got a column, and it's been string all this time, and I want to switch it to int.
Okay. Well, so that might be a problem. If you've got wacky strings in there, that's not just going to switch.
Well, yeah, like let's say I've got 1 million of them and they're all ints except 3 or 4.
So you've got a couple of options. You can, probably the best thing then at that point is to go into SQL Management Studio. Remember, this is your SQL Azure database. I think this is one of the best things about mobile services is we don't hide anything from anybody. So
it feels like you're hiding a lot,
but
and you are, but you're saying if I just look behind, I think there it is.
I mean, you just follow links in the portal, in the mobile services portal. It'll take you to the SQL database.
You're not even trying to hide it.
We're not trying to hide it. No, I mean, we're quite proud of that fact because, it opens up a lot of possibilities. We have this mantra of simplicity with enablement. We want it to be...
Simplicity with enablement.
Yes.
Dude, I like that. Make a t-shirt.
Thank you. That'll be my t-shirt for next build. So the idea is that all the main scenarios, the core scenarios everyone wants are really, really simple.
Right.
But the problem with solutions that do that is they walk you into a corner, right? They're great at those scenarios and they suck at everything else. I'm terrified of that problem. That is not what I want mobile services to be.
What about versioning? Like, let's say that I've got 1 million people out there playing Jabooled or whatever, and suddenly, I don't know, and then I want to... I want to change this, but some of them are going to be on version 1, some are going to be on version 2. I really need to have /v1/v2. I'm editing code in production.
Yeah.
What's the story there?
Okay, so versioning. Let's talk about deployment. Yeah, you got 2 questions.
You got 3 minutes.
Deployment. How you manage making deployments, and you kind of ALM, your application lifecycle management. The way people do this, like the TalkTalk guys we talked about in the keynote this morning, my application, is you have multiple mobile services, right? You have a do-to-dev, a do-to as prod, and a do-to-QA, whatever you need.
Okay.
And then you have scripts. So we have the CLI, which allows you on Mac and on Windows.
The command line interface.
You can write scripts that do everything you can do in the portal. So you automate it, just like you do with any other development workflow. You have your build tasks, and you literally have a script that deploys everything to dev. You keep working on that. When you're happy with it, you change the parameter you deploy to production. This is how people do that.
Okay.
Now, versioning of different clients.
So I get all this
services.
thing worked out. I figured out my switching a string to an int.
Yep.
Now, how do I not break the world?
Don't
break the world. You have 2 minutes.
2 minutes. We can. Well, I mean, we don't solve this entirely for you because it so varies based on whether you're making breaking changes. It's very, very domain specific.
Sure.
But it is totally possible to solve. So I have a couple of blog posts that talk about how I do this in my application. The first thing is my app launches, and it makes a background call to mobile services to a custom API, and it says, this is the version of the client I'm running. What should I do? And it sends back instructions. Those instructions can be things like, open a pop-up window and tell this guy to go and get the latest version of the application and quit out.
Sure.
So, and actually sends them off to like the iTunes store or the Windows store or whatever. Or it could just be send a prompt of saying, oh, you're on an old version. Or it could be, nothing needs to do this. Is a backwards
or I
compatible
maintain
version.
multiple ones. If you have dev and prod, I could have V1 and V2.
And then the other thing you can do is you can add using a filter. We got a filter is a way of augmenting the HTTP requests.
Yeah.
You can tag a client version along with that. And then wherever you need to, you can sniff the version on the server and say, okay, this is an old client, so I need to handle him in such and such a way. So, I mean, it's actually pretty easy to do this stuff. It just need to put a bit of forethought into how your service evolves, which bits are breaking change, which bits are supportable change. We can only do so much of that for you. We could probably do a little bit more today, but at the moment, you're really going to have to think that through.
Okay, cool. So there are a couple more questions that we're not going to get to, so folks can go and follow Josh Twist on Twitter and ask him those questions and make sure they answer. We only have a minute left here at Channel 9 Live, which is a bummer. But in that remaining minute, we are going to take these little Channel 9 people and throw them at the camera. Because we throw like programmers.
No,
now I'm going to throw this can of non-specific diet soda at you guys. Thank you guys hanging out with us today. It's always fun to spend time with Channel 9. We love you guys, and we'll be back tomorrow morning with all sorts of great fun stuff. So, bye-bye.